Hey folks, hope you're doing well out there. Today we are going to do a compression test on the GSXR 1100. There's a few things you need to do prior to doing a compression test. We're going to use the electric starter to turn the engine over, so you want to make sure the battery is well charged. Engine ideally should be hot, but today I've drained the carbs, so we're going to do it cold. It'll skew the results slightly, but what we're looking for is an evenness, and we're within parameters for the factory. So I've run the carbs dry. What I'm going to do now is take the spark plugs out so that we can turn the engine over easily and do the compression test. On a GSXR 1100, the spark plugs require an 18 millimeter socket. So that's what we're going to use, this 18 millimeter socket. And we'll take out these spark plugs. Now you'll remember before we heat cycled the engine several times, and that was after it hadn't run for many, many years. So it's going to be interesting to see what these spark plugs look like. It was running on all 4 cylinders. The spark plug is loose, but it's not coming out. Needle nose pliers work really well for this. I like to just grab the plug and pull it out. So, spark plug looks good. A little bit of black on it, but so the spark plug looks good. You can see how it looks. Center plugs are a lot easier with a longer extension, such as this. So we'll put that on now. This spark plug looks even better. Look at that. So the plugs are looking good. Wasn't run for too long, but they look great. So when you're doing this, you want to make sure you protect the frame. You want to scratch this aluminum. Aluminum is very soft metal. It's easily scratched and damaged by steel wrenches. So be careful and make sure you don't scratch your frame. Now comes number 2. It looks the same and number 1. A little bit of difference between these two. This is number 1 right here. Little, looks like it's running a little leaner. It's brown. Remember, these carbs haven't been through their final balancing yet, final tuning. Number 2 is got quite a bit of carbon on it, so it looks like it's running a little bit rich. So we'll address that when we balance the carbs. Now, to compression test a motorcycle, you need a compression testing kit. So the kit has a screw-in piece, and then this piece which attaches to the end and allows you to test. Key is to get the right size screw-in piece, which we have here. So this piece here goes into the cylinder, and we then attach the gauge to the end, and we can read out the compression as we do it. So there's my compression test kit. So let's get this set up, and we'll start with number 4. How about that? Okay, so I am installing the compression tester into cylinder number 4. And actually, I'll do the rest of them. But the goal is we want to get a valid reading for this cylinder. Okay, after a fair bit of fiddling, this is in, number 4. So now we want to attach the gauge, and it comes with this quick release, which we pull back, push this in, and now the gauge is attached. So there's the gauge, and it's attached. So we're going to set this right here. Hopefully it'll stay there while we crank it. Now, one of the things you have to do with the compression test is you have to hold the throttle wide open while you're doing the test. So let's turn on the power. We've got oil in the engine. We've got the spark plugs out. There's no gas in the carbs. So this should crank over with no real issues. So number 4 is at 100, I'd say exactly 125 psi. Number 4 is at 125 psi. Okay, so this is compression test on cylinder number 3. Okay, again, we're right around 125 psi. This is cylinder number 2. So we're about to do the compression test on cylinder number 2. Okay, let's do it again. Here we go. So this number 2 cylinder comes in at today 120 psi. So 120 psi on number 2. Okay, the last test, cylinder number 1. Same thing again, 125 psi. So we're 125 psi on number 1, 120 on number 2, 125 on number 3, and 130 on number 4 with this test. So I'd say they're pretty uniform. That's a good sign. We'll check the manual and see what the stats are. So the compression test has given us some bad news here, with each cylinder pressure between 100 and 125 psi. This is below the limit for the motorcycle. Standard operating pressure for this motorcycle is between 142 and 199 psi. So we're a long ways below that. Manual also states that if all cylinder pressures are below 142 psi, then the engine has to be looked at. So our next test will be to do what's called a leak down test. The leak down test is where we pressurize the cylinder and we determine where it's leaking from, whether it's the exhaust valves, intake valves, or piston rings. So in the next video, we'll be doing the leak down test on the 1988 GSX-R 1100 engine.